In the afternoon, when school was out, and the last one had left with his little dirty snuffling nose, instead of going home, I would go down the hill of the spring where I could be quiet and hate them. It would be quiet there then, with the water bubbling up and away, and the sun slanting quiet in the trees, and the quiet smelling of damp and rotting leaves and new earth, especially in the early spring, for it was worse then. I could just remember how my father used to say that the reason for living was to get ready to stay dead a long time. And when I would have to look at them a day after day, each with his and her secret and selfish thought, and blood strange to each other blood and strange to mine, and think that this seemed to be only way I could get ready to stay dead, I would hate my father for having ever planted me. I will look forward to the times when they faltered so I could whip them. When the switch fell, I could feel it upon my flesh. When it welted and ridged, it was my blood that ran. And I would think with each blow of the switch, now you are aware of me. Now I am something in your secret and selfish life, who have marked your blood with my own forever and ever. And so I took Ants. I saw him pass the schoolhouse 3 or 4 times before I learned that he was driving 4 miles out of his way to do it. I noticed then how he was beginning to hump, a tall man and young, so that he looked already like a tall bird hunched in the cold weather on the wagon seat. He would pass the schoolhouse, the wagon creaking slow, his head turning slow to watch the door of the schoolhouse as the wagon passed, until he went on around the curve and out of sight. One day I went to the door and stood there when he passed. When he saw me, he looked quickly away and did not look back again. In the early spring, it was worse. Sometimes I thought I could not bear it, lying in bed out at night, with the wind geese going north and their honking coming from faint and high and wild out of the wild darkness. And during the day, it would seem as though I couldn't wait for the last one to go, so I could go down to the spring. And so when I looked up and day and saw Ant standing there in his Sunday clothes, turning his hat round and around in his hands, I said, "If you've got any woman folks, why in the world don't they make you get a haircut?" "I ain't got none," he said. Then he said suddenly, driving his eyes at me like 2 hounds in a strange yard, "That's why I come to see you about." "And make you hold your shoulders up," I said. "You haven't got any, but you've got a house. They tell me you've got a house and a good farm, and you live there alone, doing yourself, do you?" He just looked at me, turning the hat in his hands. "A new house," I said. "Are you going to get married?" And he said again, holding his eye to mine, "That's what I come to see you about." Later, he told me, "I ain't got no people, so that won't be no worry to you. I don't reckon you stay the same?" "No, I have people in Jefferson." His face fell a little. "Well, I got a little property. I'm forehanded. I got a good honest name. I know how town folks are, but maybe when they talk to me, they might listen," I said, "but that would be hard to talk to." He was watching my face. They're in the cemetery." "But your living kin," he said, "they'll be different." "Well, will they?" I said. "I don't know. I never had any other kind." So I took Ants, and when I knew that I had cash, I knew that living was terrible, and that this was the answer to it. That was when I learned the words are no good, and that words don't ever fit what they are trying to say. When he was born, I knew that motherhood was invented by someone who had to have a word for it, because the ones that had the children didn't care whether there was a word for it or not. I knew that fear was invented by someone that had never had fear. Pride, who never had pride. I knew that it had been not that they had dirty noses, but that we had to use one another words by like spiders dangling by their mouths from a beam. swinging and twisting and never touching, and that only through the blows of the switch could my blood and their blood flow as one stream. I knew that it had been not the that my aloneness had to be violated over and over each day, but that it had never been violated until Cash came, not even by ants in the night. He had a word, too. Love, he called it. But I had been used to words for a long time. I knew that the word was like the others, just a shape to fill a lack, that when the right time came, you wouldn't need a word for that anymore than the pride or fear. Cash did not need to say it to me, nor I to him, and I would say, let's ants use it, if he wants to, so that it was ants or love, love or ants, it really didn't matter.